Good morning. Welcome to the class of General Psychology. Today, this is your first lecture, so we'll be talking about what General Psychology is, and in general, we'll be discussing about what is psychology. Okay. The main question that we are looking into today is what is psychology. Okay. So basically, general psychology is the first subject that we start with. Whenever we start the course of psychology, we always start with general psychology because it's like a prerequisite. Okay, you need to know some of the basics before you start the mainstream ideas of the subject. As in, if you are studying mathematics, you should know the basics of algebra, you should know the basics of geometry. Okay, if you are learning physics, then you should know the basics of laws of motion, you should know the basics of thermodynamics. Okay, those are prerequisites. Okay, if you are getting into the mainstream fields, you should know the prerequisites, right? So general psychology, we in general psychology we deal with the prerequisites. That is, we look into the topics that were taught to you in 11th and 12th, if you took psychology in 11th and 12th. But mostly it happens that there are students who come in from commerce, science, or some other fields who have not taken psychology in their 11th and 12th, or they have not been into psychology. Okay, so for them, we always have the first course as the prerequisite, that is general psychology. Okay, so the first chapter that we have in general psychology today that we are discussing is origin of psychology. Okay, so in origin of psychology we will be discussing about the definitions of psychology. Okay, that will be the first thing. Then we'll move on to understanding the historical development of psychology, how it got developed. Okay, from where it started. Okay, what's the story of psychology? Okay, from where it started up till now. Okay, then we'll be discussing about psychology as a science. Okay, that's it. Those are two to three topics that we are going to discuss today. Okay, and that will be the end of our chapter. The first chapter is the origin of psychology. Okay, now the first thing, let me introduce psychology to you. Okay, in simpler words I'll put it. Okay, so psychology deals with almost all the aspects of our lives. Okay, psychology can be applied to everywhere. Okay, I personally believe that wherever you find humans, you can apply psychology there. Okay, so it can be applied to everything, everywhere, and to everyone. Okay, because we have a different field for everything. Okay, if you want to understand the psychology of women during pregnancy and during menopause period, we have field for that, we have research for that. Okay, if you want to understand the psychology of a teenage child, we have field for that. Okay, so in general, if I am talking, then there's developmental psychology, there's lifespan psychology. Okay, then if you want to understand the behavior of people in organization, then we have organizational psychology. If you want to understand the behavior of school students and how school is affects the upbringing of the students, then we have school psychology for that. Okay, if you want to understand that how education will help change the behavior of students, then we have educational psychology for that. Okay, so, and it's not that these are the only applications of that particular fields. There can be a lot of things: education psychology, school psychology, clinical psychology. Okay, these are the fields that are applied widely and variedly. I mean to say that there is a lot of applications of a single field. Okay, so it applies to all the aspects of life. Okay, but there are some misconceptions as well. Okay, psychology is, if I give you the prime definition, the basic definition of psychology right now, it is that psychology is the study of human behavior and mental processes. That's it. Okay, So there are a lot of misconceptions of what actually psychology is. Okay, when people are talking about psychology, they use certain words like psychosis and mental and psycho health and mental health and whatnot. Okay, and other than that, psychologists are compared with astrologers. It's like psychologists can predict your behavior, they can tell you why you are behaving the way you are behaving. Yes, that is a part of it. Psychologists can tell you what the problem is, why you are behaving the way you are behaving. If there is a problem, psychologists can tell you the problem, but they cannot predict what would happen in the future. Okay, they cannot predict your behavior for the future. They can tell you if there is a problem with your mental capacities, if there is problem with your brain, or if there is problem with your behavior, or with your mental processes, or with your cognition. Okay, that all problems can be dealt by a psychologist. Yes, it is true. But we cannot look at your face and tell you what you had for your breakfast. Okay, that's completely absurd. Okay, that's not what psychologists do. Okay, so psychologists are very much compared with astrologers and gemologists and numerologists and graphologists and whatnot. Okay, we cannot look at your bumps on your head, on your skull, and tell you that why you are behaving the way you are behaving. Okay, or we cannot predict your future based on that. Okay, we need information. We use scientific methods to get to the conclusion of why the things are the way they are. Okay, so we as psychologists have a huge responsibility, no less than other fields. Okay, we are equally important because we too use scientific methodologies to come to the conclusions of human behavior. If even we are predicting, we use scientific methods to make the prediction, and those are hypothetical predictions, obviously. Okay, which may or may not get proven. Okay, if they get proven, okay, not if not, then okay. Okay, we have different hypotheses. So that's a huge process, but let me tell you, there are misconceptions and don't fall for that. Psychology is just about understanding human behavior and mental processes, nothing else. Okay, there is a lot into it, but nothing more than this. Okay, no future predictions and not all that things. Okay, now today we'll be discussing about the basic questions of whether a psychology is science or whether it's art, how it came into existence and all that, and what is the definition of psychology. That's all we are going to see today. Okay, so this is basic introduction of what psychology is. Let's move on to our next part, that is definition of psychology. I'll be telling you what were the early definitions. Okay, so let's move on to the definitions of psychology. Okay, let's move on to definitions of psychology. Let us understand what is psychology. Okay, let's give a definition, a scientific definition. Okay, so if we start with the basics, the early definitions say that psychology is the study of soul. Okay, so the first step that we took, okay, was to study the soul, to understand what is human, okay, and how humans make decisions. We thought that the subject matter is the soul. Soul makes the decision, soul talks, soul is the, body is just a matter. Soul is what makes human. Okay, so the first thing the goal of psychology was to study the soul. Okay, but then it got rejected because soul has no physical form. Okay, how can you identify a soul? Okay, scientifically it's not possible to identify a soul because there is no mass, there is no matter, there is no volume. Okay, so the idea of soul was very absurd, which is known as metaphysical. Okay, Dandapani has named it as metaphysical, something that has no physical, it has existence. We know that it has existence, but no physical existence. So we are kind of confused whether it's there or not. Okay, so it's metaphysical. And other than that, how would you define a soul? Like, okay, a human has a soul. Now, what is a soul? Okay, it's very hard to define physically, and how, what's the appearance of soul? Okay, right? So those were the questions why we just, modern psychologists are not happy with the idea of studying the soul. So then we studied the mind. Okay, the next thing that came was to study the mind. So the next definition was that psychology is the science of mind. Okay, and it was accepted by some Greek philosophers. Okay, according to them, psychology was held as a branch of mental philosophy. Since this definition does not include behavior of human beings, it is kind of uh, hard to, measure mind, because behavior is something that you can see. You cannot see a mind. Like, okay, the same problem that we had with the soul, the same problem is with the mind. Okay, how can you measure a mind? Okay, you cannot measure mind, you cannot calculate mind. Okay, you cannot see the mind. Okay, so there wasn't the observable component, behavior. Okay, so the definition was dropped by psychologists. The next in the picture was the science of consciousness. Psychology is the science of consciousness that came into modern times. Okay, according to Bagga and Singh in 1990, at one time during the history of psychology, it was felt that the main business of psychology was with the conscious experience. Conscious experience is something that you have experienced now, in the moment. Okay, so it is observable, it is explainable, right? But it is very subjective. Okay, obviously, if we are talking about a science, if we are saying that psychology is a science, then it has to be objective. Okay, science is objective, it's general. Okay, whatever applies to you applies to me in science, right? So science is, I'm not saying that it's completely objective, but there has to be some objective part into it, no, right? And if you're talking about only consciousness, your consciousness and my consciousness is always going to be different, because your conscious experience is different from my conscious experience, right? So it is very subjective. Okay, if we are studying, so we cannot point out anything in general, because everyone has different conscious. Okay, so if I want to understand anything, I have to understand it for individuals individually, right? Because if I'm talking about consciousness, there is no general definition of consciousness. Okay, there is nothing general in consciousness, everything is subjective. Okay, so the term consciousness also was supposed to have a philosophical tinge and not accepted by the modern scientific minded psychologists. So then came the final thing that was accepted, that is the study of behavior. That came in with the development of the school of thought, which is behaviorism. Okay, behaviorism came in the 20th century with Watson, John B. Watson. Okay, he emphasizes that there is nothing static. Okay, everything can be learned, everything has a process, and if you go through that process, you can learn everything and anything. Okay, so what he believed was that the activities that are observable, okay, make sense, right? Because you can observe it and you can generalize it. And he said that the behavior that is carried out by humans and animals are kind of same. Okay, no doubt that humans are complicated species, they are complex, but the basic thing is same. Animals require, animals have the basic needs. Those are the same needs that humans follow, right? The sense of security, the sense of food, the sense of thirst, that is all common in all the animals, whether it's human or some other species. This is the part of evolution. It's going to be the same. So some behaviors can be adopted from animals, and some behaviors, if you want to observe, you can observe it in animals. Okay? So Watson held the opinion that there are no essential differences between human and animal behavior, and that we can learn much about our own behavior from the study of animal behavior. Okay, so that was it. The term behavior is still in the definition of psychology. Okay, now if we are talking about the current definitions, okay, so let me tell you that there are two kinds of psychology. Okay, there is modern psychology and there is historical psychology. Okay, the one that got developed until 19th century. Okay, the psychology that started from the history and got developed until 19th century is the history of psychology. The modern psychology starts from the 19th century, when all the school of thoughts started developing. That was 19th century, which is considered as the modern psychology. Okay, now modern definitions or current definitions, there are a lot of current definitions, like a lot of psychologists have given their best to explain psychology, to understand the subject matter of psychology, because that's important. Okay, if you are talking about psychology, a general person, the first question that the general person has is, what is the subject matter of psychology? If you are talking about psychology, what is psychology? What is the subject matter? When I say what is psychology, it means that what does it study? Psychology is no different than other sciences. If you are talking about biology, it's very straightforward that what it studies. Okay, what is the study matter of biology? We all know. Okay, biology studies all the living organisms, whether it's animals, birds, insects, microorganisms, whatever it is. Biology studies living organisms. What does physics do? Physics studies the physical aspects in our surrounding, whether it's motion, it's gravity, it's thermodynamics, it's heat, whatever, right? What does psychology do? Okay, what is the subject matter of psychology? And that's where we are all confused. Okay, the historical psychologists were confused at that point, whether to study soul, whether to study mind, whether to study consciousness. And then came the modern psychologists who made it clear. Okay, so now we'll look into the modern definitions of psychology. Okay, so let me give you a definition from Woodworth. He quotes, psychology is the scientific study of the activities of the individual in relation to his environment. Okay, so the first thing is, which is common in almost all the definitions, the first part, that psychology is a scientific study. Okay, which answers your question that whether it's art or science. Okay, so the answer is that psychology is a science, because it uses scientific methodology, it uses the scientific study to come to the conclusions of all the hypothetical whatever hypothesis we make. Okay, and when we come to the conclusion to the problem, we use scientific study to come to the conclusion. Okay, then if I quote Mann, the definition from Mann, psychology today concerns itself with the scientific investigation of behavior, including from the standpoint of behavior to much of what earlier psychologists dealt with as experience. Okay, so again, the first thing is scientific investigation of behavior. Okay, and the same thing Woodworth said, that psychology is scientific study of the activities of the individual in relation to his environment. Activities of individual, whatever activities you carry out as an individual in your environment, that's a behavior. Obviously, that's a way of saying behavior. Okay, when I say that you are performing activity as an individual in your own environment, that is, what are you doing? You are carrying out a behavior. You are carrying out behavior. What is behavior? Behavior is you carrying out a certain kind of activity in your environment, in your own way, in your own individualistic way. That is your behavior, right? Okay, so it is nothing but scientific study of behavior. Okay, psychology is nothing but scientific study of behavior. That's what Woodworth said, that's what Mann said. Okay, Mann says that the earlier psychologists were dealing with experience, and now we are dealing with behavior. There is no difference. The study matter has changed. At first we were dealing with experience, that was consciousness, conscious experience, and now we are dealing with behavior. Okay, conscious experience is subjective. Behavior is something that we can observe and make general. Okay, let me give you some other modern definitions. Okay, and we'll see that there are differences in the definitions, but there are also similarities. Okay, so the first was given by Morgan et al. In 1996. Psychology is the science of human and animal behavior. It includes the application of the science to human problems. Okay, that is, psychology is to understand the human behavior and animal behavior, and then to apply this science to solve human problems. Okay, to first understand the human behavior and then to apply the science to solve the problems. Okay. Second was given by Feldman in 1996, that is the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. The scientific study of behavior and mental processes, and this is one of which APA also gives this kind of definition, that is American Psychological Association also says that psychology is the scientific study of human behavior and mental processes. Okay, the scientific study of behavior and mental processes and how they are affected by an organism's physical state, mental state, and external environment. This definition was given by Tavris and Wade in 1997. This definition has one more element into it. Okay, that scientific study, psychology is a scientific study of behavior and mental processes, but how there is an effect of human or organism's physical state, mental state, and external environment. Okay, which is important. Okay, psychology, yes, psychology studies how your physical state is affecting your behavior and mental processes, how your mental state is affecting your behavior, how environment is affecting your behavior. Okay, social psychology studies how environment affects your behavior. Okay, social psychology also studies how your internal processes can affect your behavior. Okay, so this is a point. Okay, we look into physical state, mental state, and environment, and then understand how it is affecting the behavior of the organism. Okay, then next one is that psychology is all about human behavior and about mental processes and about the context in which the behavior and mental processes occur. Okay, context, this was given by Das in 1998, and it's the same. Okay, it means the same thing. Okay, we are looking into the human behavior, we are looking into mental processes, and we are looking into the context of how these things are occurring, how these things are affected. Okay, and what is the context? The context is the physical state, mental state, and the environment. Okay, there are only three contexts in which the behavior can be affected. There are a lot more than that. Okay, that can be cultural, that can be economical, but those don't have the most of influence. Okay, these three, physical, mental, and environment, have the most influence on human behavior and mental processes. Okay, then we have Leahy in 1998 said the science of behavior and mental processes, psychology is the science of behavior and mental processes. Barron in 1999 said the science of behavior and cognitive processes, psychology is the science of behavior and cognitive processes. Psychology is scientific study of behavior and mind. This was given by Nairn in 2003. A science in which behavioral and other evidence is used to understand the internal processes leading people to behave as they do. This was given by Eysenck in 2004, which is not different. It is kind of changing the simple sentence into compound sentence. Okay, he says the same thing. A science in which behavioral and other evidence is used to understand the internal processes leading people to behave as they do. So we are trying to understand the behavior and the internal processes which lead to that behavior. Okay, so it's the same thing, everyone is saying the same thing. The scientific study of behavior and mental processes, this was given by Ciccarelli and Mayer in 2006, and Kuhn and Mitter said the same thing in 2007 and 2008. The science that studies behavior and mental processes, this was given by Rathus in 2008. So basically, if we are talking about the modern definition, it holds the same thing. Okay, we are looking into mental processes and behavior. These are the two things that we are into. Okay, and when we are talking about mental processes, it is cognition. It is known as cognition. The word that we use in psychology is cognition. Okay, so we are studying cognition and behavior. Those are the two things that are observable. Okay, cognition deals with all the mental processes, that is information sensing, interpreting, problem solving, all that things, learning, memory, all that are related to cognition and mental processes. Okay, now we'll be looking into the nature and characteristics of behavior. Okay, what is the nature of behavior? What is behavior basically? Because it's a broad term, it's a complex term. Okay, so I'll try to explain what behavior is, because yes, you have heard about behavior, but what is its nature and what are its characteristics? It's important because we are continuously talking about behavior, and psychology is all about behavior, so we should know what behavior is. Okay, it's not just a verb from English language, it holds a lot of meaning, so we'll understand that. Okay, now let us talk about behavior. We have defined psychology as study of behavior. So what behavior is? What is behavior? According to psychologists, behavior is everything or anything that human does in their own environment, human being or animal does in their own environment in an observable way. Okay, so there are some behavior that are direct and some are indirect. That means some can be observed directly, some can be observed indirectly. So if you are moving, if you are picking up a pen, or if you are walking, those are behaviors, and those are direct behaviors because you can directly observe them. But there are some behaviors like emotions or attitudes which are expressed, so they are indirectly observed through your expression. Now your expression can be through vocal, that means the way you talk, the way you are saying things. Okay, suppose your emotion is angry, then your voice will show that, right? So there are two kinds of behaviors. One is directly observable, another is indirectly observable, and those both the behaviors are important. Okay, so behavior is something that is done or that is observed in some or the other way in human beings and animals in their own environment. Okay, now let us talk about some general characteristics of human behavior. Okay, I'll number the characteristics. I'll say the numbers. Okay, and you keep on writing them. Okay, so the first characteristic is that behavior is influenced by a number of factors. Okay, behavior is influenced by a number of factors. This we have talked about. Behavior can be influenced by a lot of factors. It may be personal, that is physical, that can be biological, mental. Then there is environmental factors such as social factors, cultural factors, past experiences. Then there are motivational factors, emotional factors, cognitive factors. Okay, cognitive factors are like feelings, emotions, motivation, thoughts. Those belong to the cognitive type. Okay, so there are a lot of factors that influence behavior. Okay, the second characteristic is that behavior varies in complexity. Behavior varies in complexity. That means some behavior can be simple and some can be complex. Simple behaviors are like waving at a friend, or reflex responses like sneezing or picking up a pen. Those kind of behaviors are very simple. They are not complex, but playing a musical instrument or singing those are complex things. You need training for that. You cannot learn that uh, easily. Okay, those are complex behaviors. Okay, cycling is a complex behavior, driving a car is a complex behavior, parking between two cars is a complex behavior. Those are the kind of behaviors which require some prior training, or some prior instructions. Okay, then there are highly complex behavior. Highly complex behaviors are complex than the complex behaviors. Okay, they are highly complex, such as landing on the moon or flying a fighter plane. Okay, you need special training for this kind of thing. Okay, so they are highly complex behavior. The third characteristic is that the factors that are influencing the behavior are of different kinds, that we have seen obviously. Okay, there are two kinds of factors basically. First is the factors influencing and the factors belonging to the individual, and the second are the factors belonging to the environment. The factors that are belonging to the individual can be biological, psychological, and physiological. Okay, whereas the environmental factors can be cultural. They that can depend on your physical surrounding, your family and friends, and your social behavior and social background and all that. Then we have next characteristic of behavior is individual differences. That means that behavior can be different amongst individuals. You cannot expect two individuals to have the same behavior in the same situation. Individuals behave in their own way in given situation, so there are individual differences. The next characteristic is that behavior also shows similarities. uh, Two individuals may behave differently, but there are some degree of similarity in behavior among people. This is mostly seen when they are in group. In groups, people tend to show similar behaviors amongst the group. But there are some universal behaviors which are seen and which are common for mostly everyone, such as if a dust particle falls into a person's eye, he or she tries to remove it. This is a universal behavior. Okay, if dust falls into your eye, you are this is instinctive. You are going to try to remove it because it's uncomfortable or it's hurting, right? The next characteristic is that behavior is always purposeful and goal directive. Okay, none of the behavior is carried out without a purpose. Okay, there is no behavior which has no goal to it. Okay, every behavior has some or the other goal. Okay, if you are drinking water, the purpose is to quench your thirst. Okay, if you are studying, then purpose is to get good marks. If you are getting good marks, then the purpose is to get a good job. If you are getting a good job, the purpose is to earn more money. If you are earning more money, the purpose is to feed your family. So everything has a purpose. Okay, every behavior has a purpose. Whatever you are doing has a purpose. Now there are two kinds of behavior. Okay, first is approach behavior and second is avoidance behavior. Approach behavior is having the positive goal, and avoidance behavior is having negative goal. That means approach behavior is a directive behavior. Okay, and avoidance behavior has the goal is to avoid the circumstances. Okay, so if you are switching off the fan when you are feeling cold, then you are doing an avoidance behavior because you want to avoid the discomfort of cold. Correct? So now let us move on to the next characteristic, that is behavior is changeable to a large extent. Okay, behaviors can change. For everyone, behavior can change because different situations put on demand different things, and people can show different behavior, changeable behavior in same situations as well. Okay, the changeability is the factor which enables a bad man to be a good man and a good man to be a bad man. Okay, a bad man can be a good man can be a bad man, right? That happens because behavior can change. It can change based on experiences, or it can change based on certain factors affecting it. They can be individual factors, or they can be environmental factors, but these factors affect to change the behavior in a person. Next characteristic is that behavior also shows stability. Okay, there are some behavior which stay the same throughout your life. For example, when you start writing with your left hand, you write with your left hand for the rest of your life. Okay, if you're brushing with your left hand, brushing with your right hand is kind of uncomfortable and you don't do it, right? So some behaviors have stability. Okay, they don't change. Those kind of behaviors don't change over time. They remain the way they are. Okay, then we have that behavior is integrated. Behavior is integrated. This is one of the most important characteristic. Okay, whatever the person does, okay, is behavior, and all the behaviors are integrated. They are all stitched into one, and that makes person's personality. Okay, not everyone behaves the same, but they don't behave completely different. Okay, but there are some individual factors which are not common to everyone, but they are special to individual. Suppose someone is introverted, someone is extroverted, someone is helpful. Those are the kind of behaviors which they carry out at large extent and which are individual to them. Okay, it's not that they are the only one who are introverted. Okay, there can be a lot of other people who are introverted, but introversion is a special characteristic of them. Okay, that's a special behavior of that. Okay, so every individual behaves as a total person, and that total behavior makes up your personality. Okay, now let us talk about the history of the development of psychology. Okay, now let us talk about the historical development of psychology. Okay, so first of all, what is psychology? What is the word psychology? Okay, so the origin of psychology dates back to 1870s. The term psychology is derived from two words, psych and logos. Psych meaning soul and logos meaning knowledge or study. So psychology means study of soul. Basically, as per its name, it means study of soul. Okay, this word was not much commonly used in 19th century, and the field of psychology was not independent until modern psychologist came in. The first laboratory that we had, that was independent laboratory of psychology, that emerged in the year of 1879 when Wilhelm Wundt established the first psychological laboratory at University of Leipzig, Germany. So that was the first time that anyone had tried putting psychology as an independent academic discipline. Uh, After that, Wundt was a medical doctor by training. He was a physician, and early in his career, he was fortunate to work with some great physiologists of the 19th century. So the intellectual roots of psychology lie at the union of philosophy and physiology. Okay, the philosophy here is to study the soul, and the philosophy is the soul, whereas physiology is to study the body in response to the soul. Wundt is traditionally recognized as the founder and the father of modern psychology. The year of 1879 is seen as a remarkable year when psychology finally emerged as a unique field. Prior to Wundt, it was not possible to major in psychology because there were no official psychologists or psychology departments. So Wundt was the first person who started studying the structure of mind. So his school of thought is known as structurism. Wundt was the father of structurism. He studied the structure of mind, and he referred the immediate conscious experience, the contents and the processes of subjective experience, such as sensations, thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Okay. So his subject matter was to understand the structure of mind and understand the immediate conscious experience, the sensations, thoughts, feelings, and emotions that we feel in the particular moment when we look at something. Okay. Then after 1879, psychology was recognized as an independent science. Okay. Now why it was considered as science, we'll see in our next discussion of psychology as a science. Now let us look at psychology as a science. Now, psychology has been defined as the science of behavior and mental processes. So, why is it a science? Uh, because if we are talking about science, then psychology has to be similar to physics, chemistry, botany, biology, okay? Or is it different? That's the question. Is it similar to the sciences that we have known, or is it different? So, here we will see in our discussion that what is the nature and characteristic of science, and we'll understand psychology as a science. Okay. Now, what is science? Science is an approach to knowledge based on systematic observation. This definition was given by Leahy in 1998. Or we can say that science is a systemized uh, body of knowledge gathered through carefully observing and measuring events. Okay. So, the basis of science, the main aim of science is to classify, understand, and unify the objects and phenomena of the material world. Okay. So by using the combination of observation, experimentation, logic, intuition, scientists seek to understand the rules that govern all levels of natural universe. Okay. Now, what are the characteristics of science? Okay. The observation of events are systemized in various ways, but mainly by classifying and establishing general principles and laws to describe and predict the events that are happening in the environment as accurately as possible. Okay. So the first thing that is important in science is to generalize things. Okay. We have general law of relativity, we have general law of motion, we have all the laws that are general. Okay. The law of gravity is universal and general, the laws of motion are universal and general, right? So when we are talking about science, the rules, the laws that we are and the principles that we are using in science are all generalized and are applicable everywhere. So that's the first step of science. Okay. Psychology studies behavior in the same way as the other sciences study their subject matter, and therefore shares a number of features with them. Okay. Psychology as a science has a lot of characteristics which are similar to all the sciences, all the other sciences. Okay. First is empirical observation. Psychology makes empirical observations as a discipline because it collects data based on experiment, based on observation. Okay. It just not makes arguments and opinions. Okay. Psychology doesn't work on arguments, opinions, and belief. Okay. Psychology as a discipline rests on the pillars of experimentation and observation, which is the first characteristic of science and of psychology, which is similar. Okay. Second characteristic is that there is systematic approach and theory. Okay. So psychology also follows systematic procedure of observation, data collection, analysis, and interpretation. These are the steps of science. Okay, first you observe, then you collect data of your observation, then you analyze and compare the data, and then you interpret your theory, you interpret your conclusion for the hypothesis. Okay, so this is the steps of research in psychology, as well as these are the steps of research for science. The third characteristic is measurement. Now science uses precise measurements. There are quantities, there are units, and there are precise measurements when it comes to science. In the same way, when it comes to psychology, there are precise measurements. There are scales to measure intelligence, there are scales to measure personality, there are scales to measure memory. Everything is measured precisely, accurately, and with standard measurements. So, that is also very common between science and psychology. And then the last characteristic is definition of terms. Okay, so there are terms in science, and every term has its own definition. If you are talking about physics, if you are talking about maths, if you are talking about chemistry, every term that is relevant to that field has its own definition. If you are talking about uh, in chemistry, if you are talking about what is a reaction, it has a definition. There is a definition of reaction, there is a definition of compound, there is a definition of molecule, there is a definition for system and surrounding. And if you are talking about physics, there is a definition for gravity, there is a definition for motion. There are definition for the terms that are used in the process of research in the field, as well as for the process of understanding the field. In the same way, psychology also defines every term that it uses. Psychology defines the concepts of intelligence, the concepts of motivation, the concepts of memory, personality. Psychology cannot measure a lot of behaviors such as beauty, such as love, such as courage and bravery, right? But psychology is a different type of science. Okay, it is not a natural science. Physics, chemistry, biology, they are the kind of sciences which are natural sciences, which study natural environment, right? So psychology is a different type of science. It's a behavioral science, because the study matter of psychology is to understand the behavior. Okay, so it is not a natural science, but it's a behavioral science. But the methods used in psychological research include observation, uh, interviews, psychological testing, laboratory experimentation, and statistical analysis. Okay. Thus, psychology is characterized under the youngest group of scientific inquiry, that is social or behavioral sciences. Okay, social sciences or behavioral sciences, which also include subjects like anthropology, economics, education, geography, history, linguistics, sociology. So, all the sciences that are related to humans come under the group of social sciences or behavioral sciences. Okay. The first group of sciences are the physical sciences or the natural sciences, which include physics, chemistry, etc. The second kind of science is life science or biological sciences, which include biology, botany, zoology, micrology, microbiology, okay, and uh, genetics and all. Okay, the application of knowledge to practical problem is an art. Okay, so when we are applying our knowledge of psychology to solve practical problems, then it becomes art. Okay, it is only acquired after you have studied enough, you have practiced enough, and when you have special experience, then you can apply that knowledge to solve problems. Okay, Since principles and laws of psychology are applied to solve human problems in a number of situations, okay, and as well as it is used in treating behavior disorders and emotional problems, it is also an art, because we use the knowledge that we have to solve the problems, practical problems that we as humans have. Okay, because we have seen behavioral disorders, we have seen mental problems. Okay, and to solve them we have to apply the knowledge that we have in psychology. Okay, so the total thing that we have discussed today started with understanding what psychology is and what misconceptions we have in psychology. After that, we defined a lot of definitions of psychology, and to give you this many definitions, uh, the only goal was to put to make a common definition. Okay, there is something common in all the definitions, and that is, first part is that psychology is a science, second is that it is the study of behavior, and the third is that it is the study of mental processes. This has been common in all the definitions. After that, we understood what behavior is and what are the characteristics of behavior. Then we moved on to understanding the history of psychology, how it evolved from philosophy and physiology and took its modern turns with the help of Wilhelm Wundt in 1879. After that, we looked into psychology as a science, whether it's science or it's art. Okay, we discussed about both the things. Okay, so this is what psychology is. Okay, we'll also have another lecture for the introduction of the fields in psychology. In the next lecture we will be looking at what are the natures and scope of psychology and its relation to other fields and other sciences. We'll also look into the subfields of psychology, what are the different subfields of psychology, and then we'll look into psychology as a subject in India as a traditional way and also in a modern way. Okay, so that would be our next lecture, but until then, I'll see you in the next lecture. Okay, have a good day.